Yeah, it's just gone 4:30, so we'll make a start. And first item is welcome to those members of the public who are watching online or at home, and hopefully you enjoy the proceedings. If we do get an issue with the live feed, we will pause the meeting and hopefully try to recover it. But welcome to the meeting. The first item we've got is public question time. Are there any public questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've got one public question. Doesn't look like he's here. Would you like me to read it out?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Hang on a minute.
Sorry, are you okay? I can hear some feedback. I just fine. Okay. That is quite opportune because Dr. Jethro Gold has just arrived. We were just about to read your question out, but if you want to read it yourself, if you want to come forward to the table, yes, and put the mic on. Thank you.
Sorry, I was delayed in a work meeting. So
no problem. Glad to see you here.
Hello, everyone. I first wanted to just say thank you to all those involved in the hard work that have been put into developing the climate and natural environment chapter of the local plan. Just got a few areas where we have some constructive suggestions. On energy and water, rather than only providing some of the energy on site, we ask that councillors take this opportunity to write into the local plan that all new housing developments generate as much electricity as they are likely to need through energy efficiency and on-site or community renewable electricity generation, or at least to have a date to sort of phase that in by. And we're also quite a water scarce region. Should it not be mandatory to include rainwater harvesting for grey water in new housing developments? On biodiversity net gain, as rightly outlined in the chapter, it would not add additional administrative costs for the council, and it could be a potential source of revenue to increase from the 10% biodiversity net gain to 20%. So would the council consider following South Cambridgeshire District Council in specifying 20% biodiversity net gain in their local plan? We also praise the inclusion of a plan for hedgehogs, but will councillors also ensure that a requirement for swift bricks and sparrow terraces on all new housing developments be included in the local plan? This is the focus of a national RSPB-backed campaign, and also has the backing of major housing developers. For example, the CEO of Barratt Homes has described this measure as a no-brainer. On embodied carbon, it is now possible, although not yet widespread, to build new houses with net negative embodied carbon emissions. Will the council commit to investigating how a requirement around embodied carbon could be implemented? And the final question I had is that while national policy does now make the installation of EV charge points mandatory on all new housing developments, we as a group would suggest that the local plan specify that these should be type 2 EV chargers, not 3-pin plugs, or at least specify that these should not be 3-pin plugs, as there have been examples of developers cutting corners on this. Also on EV charging, this is an opportunity, so we ask that the council make it easier to get permission for owners in properties without a driveway to install GUL-E type cable channels across the pavement to increase access to home charging whilst preventing a trip hazard for pedestrians. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doctor. Is it Gold or Gold? Sorry,
Dr. Gold.
Gould.
Yeah.
Gould, yeah, apologies. Okay, thank you, Dr. Gould. For the response from the council is thank you for your very helpful and interesting comments and questions. Your question relates to item 8 on the agenda, and I'm sure committee members will reflect on your suggestions as we debate that item shortly. However, in advance of that debate, I would like to say that the suggestions you set out are precisely the sort of comments we look forward to receiving at the point the document is consulted upon early next year. We are especially looking forward to suggestions from organisations such as East Cambs Can, so that between us we can refine the chapter to maximise environmental gains whilst still delivering the homes and jobs we need. I would, however, like to pick up on your final point in relation to electric vehicle charge points. The building regulations, specifically paragraph 6.2 of part S of the building regulations, which came into force from June 2022, set out detailed technical requirements for new EV charge points. These requirements include meeting a specific EV British standard, have a minimum 7 kilowatt output, and they must be a dedicated circuit. What that means in practice, therefore, is that all new homes which started being built after June 2023 must by law meet the new building regulation requirements, irrespective of when they were granted permission. So I agree with your concern and that we don't want substandard charge points being installed, but we do think the new building regulations provide a higher degree of specification which all homes must now meet, and therefore it probably isn't appropriate for a local authority such as East Cambs District Council to specify an alternative EV charging standard through the planning system. We think that would rather confuse than help. But for all your other suggestions and your questions, there are certainly matters up for discussion and investigation. Thank you very much for the question, and we look forward to, I'm sure, your many other contributions when the document is live for consultation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. Item 2 is apologies and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from councillors Pitt and Shepherd, and councillor Holtzman and Colbert are here as a substitutes.
Thank you. Next item is declarations of interest. Do any members declare any interest that's not in there? No, I'm seeing nothing. So item 4 is to confirm the minutes of a correct record, the minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of September. Are members happy with those minutes? Again, I'm seeing no dissent, so I take that as read. 5 is chairman's announcements. I've got 2 announcements. One is that we are joined certainly for the next item and the item, one of the items in, or the items in the exempt area, by Paul Remington, the chair of ECTC, John Hill, the chief executive, Emma Grimmer, and Nigel Ankers, the accountant. So, and the second item is just to welcome Jane Webb as a first meeting to Finance and Assets Committee. I think most of you have met Jane now, but welcome, Jane. So moving on then, item 6 is the ECTC business plan for 2023-2024. It's a half-year update, so I'll hand over to the team on the table.
Thank you, Chairman. The report you have before you is the half-year update. Some members will be familiar with this format, but for those of you who are new, the half-year report is a requirement of the shareholder agreement, and it's designed to provide you for an update since the business plan was approved back in March for the period between the 1st of April and the 30th of September 2023. It largely deals with an update on strategic risk management, progress against the business plan, and the financial position. I'll briefly take you through the risk management and progress against the business plan, and then I'll hand over to Nigel just to run you through the numbers. So the strategic risk management plan is provided on pages 3 to 7. I report on this to every board meeting and bring the board an update as to whether or not any of the risk scores have changed or whether I believe any needs to be changed, and provides the board with an opportunity to also have a discussion. Since members last saw this as part of the business plan, I have removed one risk, and that related to the risk on MOD phase 1 loan through the CPCA, and that's been removed purely because it was repaid on the 31st of March, but it hadn't been repaid at the time of producing the original business plan. So turning now to page 8, which is where we have the commercial services section. So for those members that are not aware, we have 2 commercial services within the company. The first is markets and the second is ground maintenance. So with markets, we've had a successful year in terms of the markets we provide. We had another successful summer with the Foodie Fridays. I attended several myself, and it certainly does make a difference to the footfall of Ely on a Friday. So there is a slight variation on the assumed profit for the rest of the year, and this mainly relates to engaging a health and safety consultant. Over the years, we've introduced so many new markets. It's been important to ensure that the health and safety catch is right and proper for the growing markets, and then the team will take that as a tool to move forward with. On grounds maintenance, they're having a better year than we expected, and this largely relates to the volume of tree work that we've been able to secure this year. So we're projecting a higher than predicted profits. Turning to the property element of the business, we have this year, because in May of this year, we finished off the Hadnam development. So we're now fully sold off and off site there. We're just finishing up the last 2 houses on the MOD, with one out for rent. And then we commenced work on the Eden Square, formerly known as the former Paradise Pool site. So we are now partway through that build project, and we're anticipating to be off site in August 2024, with sales then commencing at around that time. And the reason the sales are coming after construction, or just be ahead of construction, is because I don't know if anybody's seen the size of the site. It's quite constrained. So it doesn't lend itself to having people viewing and buying houses. And because we've got 2 blocks there, it makes sense to release them more or less at the same time. We say August 2024, but that all depends on the weather. We're building, you're getting into quite a crucial point as we're building into the winter months. So, but we do have a regular risk management group that looks at the Eden Square site, and we track progress on completions and construction costs as well. So if I just hand over to Nigel, thank you.
Thanks, Emma. So looking at the financial table on page 10, you'll see the revenues for 23-24 are going to drop to just over 5.5 million. Last year, the property company sold 82 properties across the Ely and Hadnam sites. This year, it will just be the mop-up of the last 10, 8 at Ely and 2 at Hadnam. So costs for property run in line with the sale of the houses. So that's well, they're down. Other costs are broadly the same, a little bit less on corporate costs this year. So that will leave the company in 23-24 posting a loss of 768,000, just over. This was always planned to make a loss. It is slightly higher than we put in the business plan, which was 660 of a loss, but that's mostly to do with timing. We recognised a little bit more profit in last year than we had originally planned for, and then, as Emma's just commented, we've moved the sales profile out for the Eden Square project.
Okay. Thank you for that, Nigel and Emma. We've had one question at the moment from Councillor Alison Whelan. Were you happy with the response, Councillor Whelan, and do you want to follow up on the answer?
I've got nothing else to follow up on at this stage on that particular answer. Obviously, it came through late, so I haven't had time to digest that fully at the current time. But thank you for giving that breakdown.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Whelan. Members, we've only had one written question, but I'm happy to take some verbal questions if members have got. I've got Councillor Dupre and then Councillor Whelan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions. The first one is on the risk register. I note that there are quite a number of risks. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 7, number, where else? 10 and 12, where the inherent risk and the residual risk are the same. And yet there are residual risk key controls and mitigations in place. If the mitigations are doing absolutely nothing to change the inherent risk, why are they there and what are they for? Because they're clearly not changing the level of risk that we're facing, is my first question.
I can see Emma's going to answer that.
Through you, Chairman, the way it works is it's what control, you have the inherent risk and then you have your mitigation or your monitoring of the risk. And sometimes you can monitor the risk, but it wouldn't change the score, but you are showing you're actively monitoring that risk. And depending on what materializes from the inherent risk will depend on any actions that might inform the board for going forward. I think it's important that it is in the risk management plan so that we're aware and alert to it and we are monitoring it. But you can't always bring the score down, but it's about being aware of where you're aware of it in that. So thank you, Chairman.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You had another one. You
I
said,
had
yeah.
another
Okay.
question, and my second question, and I appreciate it won't be able to be answered now, but I would like an answer after the meeting, please, if I could. Appendix 1, page 11, gives several numbers on the financial benefits to ECDC. And I wondered, please, whether I could have a response from whoever that splits those out. What are what's the detail? We've got an initial answer to the question there, but I would like to see more detail, please, as to what those are and which of those benefits, in fact, would have accrued to the council in any event, whoever developed the land in question.
Can I come in there? Sorry. We've had a response
Yeah, we
from
have.
to council. Do you want a more detailed?
I would like a more detailed
Response
breakdown,
to
a more
that.
detailed response,
Okay.
please. Thank you.
Can you take that away then? And
Through you, Chair, yes, we'll take that away.
okay, great. Thank you. I've got Councillor Alison Whelan.
Thank you, Chair. On the risk register, just a small question really. With the it says at item 7, with the exception of new loans from CPCA, ECDC cannot increase its indebtedness. Is that correct, that they can still go ahead and borrow from CPCA without authority of the shareholder?
Through you, Chairman, it was an historic council consent that it did not need to come back to council to get consent to borrow from the CPCA, but from anybody else, they would need consent for borrowing. It's an historic decision of council. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And just on sort of matter of presentation, obviously we see in the business plan on page 8, we see the Ely markets and the grounds maintenance current forecasts against the approved budget, but there's nothing at all in the property section that is equivalent to that. And it would be good to see all of those figures to understand better what's going on.
We'll take that through. Thank you.
Okay, so that'll be taken away as well. Okay. Obviously, whatever answer you get circulated to all members of the committee. Thank you. Members, any other questions on this? I'm seeing none. So this is just papers just for noting. So are we happy to note this report? Okay, I'm seeing no dissent on that. You're looking at me. Sorry.
Just wondering what the effect would be of not noting it.
Okay, thank you. Item 7 then. Thank you, gentlemen and lady. Item 7 is the service delivery plans. And if I can ask Sally to introduce this, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Appendix 1 contains the 6-month update reports for the 9 services that report to this committee as listed in paragraph 3.1. Covering report gives a status update on each of these and sets out where there are target variances at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sally. There's been no submitted questions on these reports. Members, do you have any comments or questions? I've got Councillor Goldsack. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Sally, this report, could you explain or dare I say it in public and on recording, remind me of the colorations? Because I saw blue and yellow and gold and green, and I don't see any key to tell me what they mean and where they come from. So if you could explain them to me, that might help me understand the report a little bit more.
I'll get back to members on those. The green ones are for Cleaner Greener East CAMS. Red ones are finance. I can't remember what the other colours are. I can get back to members.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dupre, and then I've got Councillor Whelan.
Thank you. Again, 2 questions. I think firstly, we have in the past had the various officers here to talk to us about these. Is that just an annual thing? And when we're at a different point in that cycle, or has that now ceased to be a thing?
So officers attend at the March meetings where they've got the end of year report and the new service delivery plans. But if you've got any questions on any of the reports, then I can take those back to officers and get you a response.
Thank you, because I do think it would be useful to have some answers to some questions here, but without the officers here, it's not going to be possible to do that. My other question was, could you please explain the difference between as required and as identified throughout?
I'll have to get back to you on that one and to speak to the officers involved and see what differences they use those words for.
Got Councillor Whelan and then.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Really, just a general comment about an awful lot of these. I really struggled as I was going through these, and I have to say that I set an awful lot of targets. I set an awful lot of, do an awful lot of stuff, appraisals, and, one of the things I find is referring to the SMART targets. And I really struggle with how a lot of these actually fit into there. I really can't see that they are measurable in any way whatsoever. And I find that just really challenging, because it's very easy for me to say, oh, well, I've done everything that was identified. And it just feels, they just aren't targets. It's just an observation, but it would be good if we actually were targeting people with SMART targets.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Whelan. I've got Councillor Holtzman and then Councillor Trapp.
Thank you, Chair. So I really appreciate the fact that council staff is putting on a very comprehensive training program. I mean, we can see by that, they had like 2 whole days and then lots of sessions are being arranged. However, the 6 to 8 time slot is perpetually difficult for people with small children, and it can often fall into commuting time as well. Now, I have previously asked whether it's possible for these sessions to be recorded, so members who can't attend can at least catch up, because it would be very sad to miss it, but have been told that that's not possible for a variety of reasons. So I wanted to ask whether, well, officers could think about what else or what other option there was for people to catch up, because it would be really sad to miss out on the training which is essential for us councillors to do our job well.
Thank you, councillor. It's a very valid comment, actually. So I think we need to take that away, or officers need to take that away and see what we can do on that. But very valid comment. We've got councillor Trapp.
Yeah, machine. Having had a glimpse of the colour coding, on one of them, the blue one, shouldn't that be says sustainably manage the East Space Service Business Centre? Shouldn't that be green? I mean, have I got the colour coding right? There's no pages, so I can't refer you to the page number.
I think personally, as a suggestion from the chair, we need, obviously, we need to understand the colour coding and certain the comments, and I think personally we should bring this back to the next meeting for comments, because obviously members are struggling to ask questions because they're not certain what's in front of them.
I'm just going to go find out.
Okay, yeah. I don't know
I
how
think
other
they
members.
probably refer to your administration's strategic plan, Chair.
Sorry, I missed that.
I think they probably refer to your administration's strategic plan.
Yeah.
Point of
we need-
order, point of order. It's your administration as well. I think it's the county, it's the district county's administration. It's not the chairman's.
Okay, if there's no more questions on this, I propose certainly to talk with officers outside and we can see, but I'm feeling the need to bring this back, even if it's just for noting, but just to make it more clearer for members.
Yes.
Chair,
if I may,
Yeah.
I think Councillor Dupre's right, and I think that's where they do come from. But I think the message through you, Sally, really is just a simple key. If this report had come with a key, I think we wouldn't have been having this discussion. So I think that's what it was. And with respect, I think Councillor Whelan said, you know, she reads an awful lot of reports. We all, you know, it's part of what we do. And you sometimes move from a RAG rating into this kind of thing, and your head's still on the RAG rating, and therefore are you looking at it right? So that's all we're asking for, really, just a little bit, help us understand it a little bit easier.
Do we want to, hopefully Maggie will get the key, now, so we can do, sorry? Yeah, I think so.
Sorry, I missed why Maggie left the room. Has she gone to get?
She's gone to get the key, the colour key, but,
Okay.
yeah. But I think we move on and we can, look at that later. Item 8 is, the local plan, climate and natural environment chapter scoping. And as I mentioned in the answer to Dr. Gould, this is the scoping document, and this will be coming back to us at the next meeting on the 25th of January. But also the sort of comments we've received tonight in the public question is the sort of thing we're looking to get, plus obviously from other residents and other groups and councillors. But I'll hand over to Sally, who's going to introduce this.
Thank you, Chair. This agenda item starts a comprehensive process of strengthening our planning policies for the benefit of our environment. Council has already agreed via its Corporate Plan 2023 and its Environment Plan 2023, the principle of establishing a new chapter for our local plan on the theme of climate change and nature recovery. Today commences the detailed engagement with members on what the content of such a chapter should be. The purpose is to establish for members what broad outline of scope you think is suitable for the new chapter, so that an initial draft chapter can be worked up for your agreement and subsequent public consultation. Of course, as the chapter gets consulted upon and further research undertaken, the chapter will undoubtedly evolve and new elements added and other elements adjusted. However, if committee can offer a steer clear today of the likely desired headlines for such a chapter, then officers can commence working up the detailed proposals. What is recommended to you is a package of potential issues which are lawfully possible and appropriate for inclusion in a local plan, are believed to be deliverable subject to detailed testing, are challenging and go beyond basic requirements, and are aligned to our environment plan aspirations to minimise carbon emissions and boost our local natural environment. We know there will be considerable public interest as this chapter evolves. Indeed, we've already had a public question at the start of this meeting. With members steered this evening, the intention is to bring back to your next meeting a fully worked up draft chapter, which with your approval, we will then commence an engagement process with our local communities, developers, and of course, organisations such as East Cambs Can. The other element in the paper is the SDP. So this agenda item also seeks committee approval to commence the preparation of a short and quickly produced supplementary planning document, SPD, on hedgehogs as part of a wider package of hedgehog recovery initiatives the council intends to undertake. Following the recent public vote, hedgehogs were identified as a priority species the public would like to see supported. Of course, we want to see all nature recover in the district, but having a flagship species chosen by the public can help our engagement with as wide an audience as possible on the need for nature recovery and the simple things that everyone can do to help. Members are asked to approve the principle of preparing a hedgehog recovery SPD, and if so, a worked up draft will be presented to your next meeting. Finally, Richard Kay sends his apologies for not being able to present this item to you this evening. However, he is available to members over the coming months if you have any questions or suggestions whilst the new chapter and the hedgehog SPD is being drafted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sally. I'd like to thank Richard. Richard can't be here this evening, but certainly I'd like to thank Richard for the work he's done already on this. We've had two written questions, both from Councillor Whelan. Are you happy with the responses, and do you have any follow-up on that, Councillor Whelan?
Thank you for the responses. And obviously, one of the reasons for the first question was exactly as expressed by our questioner, and I would like to thank him for bringing those questions because I think those were very, very good points that were raised. What I was concerned about is that we would be stuck with the headings that we've got in this chapter, and I just wanted to make sure that we would be fully free to adapt this as we go through the consultation process, because obviously, as we heard tonight, there's an awful lot happening in this area, and I think it's really, really important that we don't find ourselves constrained. So thank you for the response, and it's good to have that clarity. And I think the other question, which is over the page, which I completely forgot about, was obviously to make sure that there are items in table 2 where we're saying that they are not going to be incorporated into this, but they're quite clearly items, again, that have already been referred to this evening, that do need to be looked at. And what I'm afraid of is that we could end up with this document actually not covering everything because it can't cover the things that are in other documents, therefore things don't get done, and therefore things that should be in here aren't as good as they could possibly be. But thank you for the answers.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. Are there any questions from other members? I've got Councillor Goldsack and then Councillor Lay, Councillor Miller, Councillor Trapp, Councillor Dupre.
So one or two then, thank you. I think you said my name first, so again, I would have liked to have asked Richard this. I don't know whether we can take this away and come back to us. I'm absolutely intrigued that we cannot be the only district council that are preparing a skeleton report for this amendment to a local plan situation. So I'm particularly interested on where the skeleton came from. You know, are we reinventing the wheel where somebody already done it out there that we could learn from? And I'm just thinking about expediting this. You know, there's some urgency on this, and you know, if somebody's already got 9/10 of what we need, then let's go out and borrow it and amend it rather than start from afresh. That would have been a question to Richard had he been here this evening. But maybe if you can come back to us, or if not, let me know and I'll willingly take it up with Richard. But I think it's something that maybe by the nods around the room, I think other members might like the answer to that as well.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsack. I've got Councillor Lay.
Yes, my worry with this environmental plan is that we seem to be rowing our boat without taking into account everything that's going on around us. Because I believe that all the other councils will be doing this, and at the end of the day, what we ought to be aiming for is the best solution we can possibly find across the whole of Cambridgeshire, but not in isolation within East Cambs, because, you know, developers will play one lot of us, one district against another, because we will end up, unless we work together, with different regulations about the environment from district council to district council. And that's not in our interest, because what we want at the end of the day is the best solution that we can possibly find, not a solution that we endorse in here at a low level when South Cambs decide that they want to be more environmentally friendly than we are. We shouldn't be going in that direction. We should be all working together to come up with the best scheme that will give everybody a brighter future in Cambridgeshire. So I think, yes, going through this is fine. There are things in here that, because it is a first draft, that I would not like to see in here. There are things in here I would like to see in here, but we need to have a draft that works for the whole of the districts around us. So it's a question of working together rather than us just coming up with a plan that suits us over here.
That was more of a debate rather than a question here. You know, you've made some good points there, so I'm not. That's why I didn't want to stop you. But I'm looking at Councillor Miller next. I'm looking at questions, and I was going to go into debate. So, yeah, okay. Councillor, so we're on questions here at the moment. Still, then we'll go into the debate.
Yes, my question is, I guess, a more general one. Is there a list of all of the various extras that the amendments to the plans would add to the cost of any particular development compared to how it may have been in the past? For example, at section 324, it refers to 5,000 to 10,000 more to construct, and the "we can't afford the burden" argument has limited traction. That's just a couple of quotes, couple of elements out of the section. That combined with the bionet gain requirements and how much more, I don't know. Is there a list somewhere? And if so, what is it? That indicates the total cost increase to developers going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. If you can take that away, but in some ways, if I can just come back in there, that touches on Councillor Lay's point, is that obviously if we've got different district councils have got different regulations, then we could end up with developers playing, you know, playing one off against the other. So yeah, it's a very valid question, I think. I've got, sorry, Councillor Trapp was next, then Councillor Dupre, then I've got Councillor Bovingdon.
Thank you very much. I'm just sort of slightly confused about the procedure here. Are we putting forward suggestions to go into this skeleton outline, which will become part of the debate, or are we going to do it separately by sending them to Richard Kay? That's what I really want to know. How we're proceeding with this to produce something on the 25th of January.
My answer to that, and before Sally comes in, my answer to that would be both. If members have got comments they want to make tonight, but then I'm sure that all members will have other documents, and we need to feed that into the process so that when we come back on the 25th of January, we've got as ready a document as we can get, and that can only come about with comments coming through from members. And we can then debate it back in January again. So yeah, I think it will be both, to be honest, Councillor Trapp. I don't know if that.
Thank you very much.
Your thinking, Sally. Yeah.
So we could put suggestions forward in this debate today, and then.
Yeah. We want to get the document as good as we can, and I'm sure we're not going to get all of the ideas this evening, because people will come out of this meeting and think, oh, we should have included that, and haven't mentioned it this evening. So. Yeah, Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. We have on in table 2 a long list of all the policies that this piece of work isn't going to cover, that there are no comments being sought on a lot of those. It's on page 6 of Appendix 1. However, it seems to me that work on a climate change and nature recovery chapter is inevitably going to impact some of those. And indeed, the proposed hedgehog SPD is going to relate to some of these. For example, if you are seeking to promote the well-being of hedgehogs, one of the matters you're going to want to consider, as with other forms of fauna, is light pollution. But we're not going to be covering that, and yet it has a huge impact on wildlife. So I'm wondering whether there is a mechanism whereby the council, this body, will be considering making annotations as an early preparation for addressing the other chapters, as we've seen in the answer to Councillor Whelan's written question, whether we will, as we go through this process, be drawing up lists, suggestions, proposals, areas where the climate change and nature recovery chapter will conflict with an increasingly out-of-date local plan where those chapters are not being touched. So is there a mechanism by which we will capture information about all the chapters that we're not going to be looking at and all the policies that we're not going to be looking at? And my second question is, if we're going to have an SPD on hedgehogs, is it intended to have SPDs on other forms of wildlife?
Did you want to respond to it? Yeah, thanks.
I'll have to get Richard to respond on question 1. Question 2, the reason it's hedgehogs this year is because that was one that's picked through the public vote and built on an environment plan. But yeah, I'll speak to Richard to see whether we can do further ones after this one's been adopted.
Councillor Bovingdon next. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. One question, which is similar to Councillor Dupre, is has it been considered how this will affect our local plan numbers, house prices, delivery? Because there is an impact to that, and I'm slightly concerned that the more we try and do good, that developers, as they are, will look at things on viability and will end up negotiating on things like affordable housing, which is a no-no, in my opinion. And secondly, just to come back on James's position, what we would also need to consider is, whilst I think your sentiment is good that we have a plan across the whole of Cambridgeshire, we do need to take into consideration that we have very differing areas, such as Cambridge City, and then we have the rural areas, and each of these will be affected slightly differently. So whilst I think we need core ideas, we also will need to have our own that are specifically prevalent to our own districts.
Thank you, Councillor Bovingdon.
So when the new local plan is produced, so this chapter will be looked at in the round with all the other chapters. So, and then it will be viability tested. So it will all be looked at together. And then if we need to reduce our ask for something, members will be given a choice to make, and then it will determine what priorities are put forward in the local plan. So this section won't be adopted on its own. It's just early preparatory work ready for when we adopt the new local plan.
Thank you, Sally. I've got Councillor Miller next, and then Councillor Lay wants to come in.
This is more of a comment, but I will make it now because I just want to touch on what I think Councillor Dupre mentioned in respect of light pollution, and that is RF pollution. I will elaborate on that in an email to Richard, but in short, there are various sources of radio frequency pollution, in particular from solar panels, which I note at section 328. He proposes to, 328, which he proposes to encourage strongly. And so I just wanted to thank Councillor Dupre for mentioning light pollution, because that is a genuine problem. But there's another form of pollution that you can't see that does also matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillor Miller. We seem to be digressing into debate here a bit, but councillor, is yours a debate question? A question, okay, thanks.
Mine's a simple question. What sort of timescale are we looking at to prepare this document to go into the local plan?
So a draft will come to this meeting in January, this committee meeting in January. Then if it's approved, then part of that paper will form consultation proposals as well. And then once you've got that gone through the consultation, it'll be revised, the draft chapter will be revised again, but we won't start the new local plan until we've got the new regulations and guidance through from government.
Councillor Goldsack.
I may just come back on that answer because I just want to be clear about this. So are you saying, Sally, that we're preparing this for the new local plan and it will not become part of the existing local plan?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, members. I think we've done all of the questions that we had. This is for, there is a recommendation to agree this, so I'm happy to propose this from the chair.
And I'm happy to second it.
Thank you, councillor Lay. So I'll go now into debate. I've got councillor Holtzman first.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to make a comment around the cost of different measures. And yes, it is obviously true if we put solar panels on a house where otherwise there wouldn't have been, there are costs associated with that. However, when it comes to the overall life as a carbon life cycle of buildings, there's a lot of changes that one can make in terms of picking the right sort of building material at the beginning that are not more expensive to developers. And there has been a very comprehensive study done in Canada where the houses in terms of the weather are similar to ours. So they need to withstand, bad weather in winter. And all of these have been commercial developments. And so, developers have not actually looked at the carbon impact of building those houses, but they just built them and then sold them on the open market. And depending on what materials they've chosen, some of those houses were about like 50% better than others in terms of the carbon expended to build them. So I think on that area, there is definitely things we could do if we have a sensibly phrased policy that do not actually make it commercially unviable to build or have significant impact, but they require developers to think about how they do stuff. But that would certainly be possible.
Thank you, councillor Holtzman. Do I have any other people who wish to speak? Councillor Trapp and then councillor Goldsack.
Thank you. I heartily concur with councillor Lay about not uniformity, but looking at similar policies across the districts, but also I think might include West Suffolk as well. Otherwise, sort of Newmarket, which is a little sort of peninsula in our region, might just sort of develop all sorts of ghastly housing because developers say, "Oh, great, we'll go there." So I think that's one thing. I mean, there's a number of things that I would say. I mean, the other one is Councillor Miller picked up on 324. To me, 5,000, 10,000, making a house super efficient seems remarkably cheap, actually. And the payback period, very quickly, is going to be about 8 years. So after 8 years of you, because the energy will be down, you will be actually in clover. So I think there's things like that, but I think quite agree with Councillor Miller. There might have to be things that have to be costed as well. I think Swift bricks probably cost nothing compared to if they're Swift bricks, probably nothing, very small compared to other things. As some of you on the planning committee have noticed, when we have had applications for PV panels and large solar farms, I have talked about grazing and land management. And I've actually talked to someone from the Farming and Wildlife Action Group who has, they've got very good policies about but basically management of solar farms, how best to use them, because this is part, I think, of this when we're planning. And I really recommend, and I suggest this to Richard Kay, that we ought to get someone from them coming along and trying to give us some information about things that maybe we don't know about. The other one, I think, in terms of planning is including cycling infrastructure. For large developments, I'm horrified to see that we're getting a cycle lane across the main spinal road, the road that actually all 500 car dwellings actually exit onto the main road, with the cycle track has to cross them. So I think those are things as well. And of course, putting it in at an early stage is much, rather than retrofitting, is much cheaper. There's other welcome things that I have in there, and I shall be writing about them to Richard Kay.
Thank you, Councillor Trapp. I've got Councillor Goldsack.
Thank you. So it's a point related to the question I asked on where the skeleton came from, but I've got a little bit clearer now through the questions and debate. If we look at section 4 and as Councillor Dupre quite rightly points out, there's an awful lot that's not involved at this stage. However, what I would say is I now understand that this is a draft for the climate change and nature recovery chapter. After which that's done, that has to overarch every other policy because it impacts every policy. We've heard discussions here on types of brick. We've heard discussions on road. We've heard discussions on cycling, on active travel, etc. So to me, this is the right thing to do. I'm really endorsing the approach now that I understand it more through this debate, which is let's get our approach and how we can capture everything we possibly can from an environmental point of view, and then review the next ones for local plan, whatever it's going to be, 2023, 2024, 25, whatever it's going to be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Goldsack. I've got Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. Just 2 points. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity to comment and shape this document going forward after this meeting. So I think we needn't try to do all the work now. But 2 things I particularly wanted to say. The first thing is that I do absolutely support being ambitious around biodiversity net gain. We are one of the most biodiversity deprived counties in the country. And that's something that I certainly take very seriously. And I know a lot of other members do as well. The second one, however, is that I'm really struggling to see how we can write a climate change and nature recovery chapter that makes no reference at all to water. And I know water is on the kind of proscribed list of things we're not, going to be looking at, but it is almost the defining environmental crisis issue in Cambridgeshire at the moment. Either because you're in an area where water is so plentiful, it presents an ever-present threat of catastrophic flooding in many of the areas that I represent and others. And one of the parish councils in my patch used the term existential dread to describe the feeling that many residents are now feeling as they see climate change thundering towards us far more quickly than had originally been thought. And of course, at the other part of the county, in the south of the county, we have such water stress and water shortage that the Environment Agency is holding up developments on the grounds that there is insufficient water. And it is one of the huge questions around the government's plans for massive development in and around Cambridge, when many of us are questioning whether there is going to be the water available to support that, even when the new reservoir in the Fens comes online towards the end of the 2030s. And as I say, I'm really struggling to see how we can write something about climate change and nature recovery that says actually water is a different problem over there. It's not, it's completely central to this. And I would really beg that we put something in here that logs that is such an important issue that, as I said before, I was asking whether we could have a list of things that occurred to us to inform later chapters. I think it's absolutely fundamental to this, and I would like to make a very specific ask that we take that very seriously within the work that we do on this particular chapter. Thank you.
Councillor Bray, yes, it's certainly a very valid comment. I've got Councillor Lay, then I'll go to Councillor Holtzman.
Mine is a question. Mine is a question. You know, the environment is so important that we seem to be handling the environment in with everything else. And I wonder, Chair, whether or not we should be looking at taking environment and handling it as a separate item, because there is so much to go through on the environment and it's so important.
It certainly impacts everything, as been said earlier, but yes, I'm sure that can be filtered through to Richard. Councillor Holtzman.
Thank you. I just wanted to come back to what Councillor Goldsack said, and very much agree with him that given that this is the overarching framework that determines large aspects of the new local plan, and we're making it now for a new local plan that we're not going to start in a couple of years. I think we need to be really mindful how we can future-proof this, because it's a very, very quickly changing field where we can now do things we couldn't do 3 years ago. And so what we have to do is put policies in place that are going to be suitable in like 5, 6 years down the road. And one thing I would like all of us to encourage is to think about, is there a policy, even though we don't quite understand how we could implement it, we can express the aspiration to do so in a way that does not obstruct development, but gives us an option where if things change and we can control it better or make better suggestions later down the road, then we can write an SPD. But if it's not in the plan at all, then we have no chances of adjusting our policies in a really rapidly changing environment. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Holtzman. Are there any other? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back to some remarks that Councillor Trapp made in response to my remarks on section 324, where the proposition is that in implementing some of these measures that we would be quids in, so to say, on the savings made on properties. I'd just like to make a couple of observations. The impact of increasing the cost of a house by 15,000 or whatever the figure is has an implication for compounding mortgage costs in a way that savings don't compound. So although yes, you're right, it has a non-linear impact, and I'd like to see some figures worked out before we would consider that to be a knockdown answer, so to say. It also raises the baseline for all properties and without reference to incomes. And so the point of my original question on is there a list of the cost impact is so that we can track the cost impact of each measure, such as by net gain, such as solar, such as materials, so on and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. I'm seeing no more hands, and obviously this is, as I said earlier, that it's been a good debate. I think there's been some very valid comments and interesting comments made tonight. And obviously, as I've said, please feed all members, and it's not just members of this committee as well. All members feed into Richard Kay comments, so that the scoping, the document which we then look at in about 6-7 weeks' time will be more of a one that we all want to shape. So if I can move to the recommendation that we agree the skeleton outline for the new chapter, and also ask officers to bring to the next meeting a draft hedgehog recovery supplementary planning document. Are everybody in favour of that? I'm seeing no dissent on that. Okay, thank you, members. It's been a good debate, and I'm sure we will debate that again in January when we get the final document. Sorry,
this one will carry on.
I'll go briefly back to the colour code just for members' information, but I still think we need to probably bring it to the January meeting just so there can be more questions that members may have, but Sally or Maggie, yeah.
So the red is for sound financial management. Blue is customers at the heart of everything we do. Yellow is safe, vibrant and inclusive communities. Orange is being excellent employer, and green is clean, green and attractive place.
Okay, we'll get that key circulated to members, but thank you for that, Maggie. Okay, moving on then, item. So we've already, we've already noted item 7, haven't we? Yeah. So moving on then, item 9 is the annual infrastructure funding statement, and if I can ask Sally to introduce that, thank you.
Members are requested to note the report which details the developer contributions received by the council during the last financial year. In addition to the projects on our SIL infrastructure list, which have received SIL funding, £992,000 was also passed to parish councils in meaningful proportion payments, which is the parish element of SIL. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sally. We've had one question from Councillor Trapp. Councillor Trapp, are you happy with the response, and do you want to follow up on that?
Well,
could your mic, sorry.
I'm disappointed that was the response, because it raised my hopes that the SIL could be used for affordable housing, because it says, look, we've got no affordable housing. It's rather like having sort of, you know, we've got no elephants here because we're spreading anti-elephant powder, you know. But thank you very much for the response.
Thank you, Councillor Trapp. Are there any other questions from members? I've got Councillor Bovingdon, then Councillor Lay.
Thank you, Sally. We obviously are members of the Finance and Assets Committee, look at these figures all the time. I have to say that it took me some while reading through this document to actually understand some of it, only in the way that it's laid out. I think my colleague, Councillor Goldsack, came up with a quote, which was,
I called it the Andre Previn and Eric Morecambe report. I think it's got all the right notes. They're just not quite in the right order.
We took a little bit of work to understand, obviously, that Appendix 1, page 5 related to the May, and page 6 was the November. But it would have been helpful that if in that, where it says infrastructure still meaningful proportion, it then put that down to, I'm presuming that one was for the Burwell May payment for the first one.
Yeah, so you're on Appendix 1, page 5.
Appendix 1, page 4 and 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Appendix 1, page 5. First one, still meaningful proportion, 16,000. Presumably that relates to the Burwell, 27th of May on the other page, 16,000. Yeah. So we found it in the end, but what would be very useful was to have that actually written on this, so that very easy to understand.
This is actually a template that we have to use, but I can, try and make a few more notes or a bit more explanatory bits in the actual covering report, but this is, a template that we have to use, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that information, Sally. Yes, the template, dare I say, is not great if that's what we've been forced to use. So we may need, speaking aloud from the chair, we may need to get a more meaningful report for members and the public as well. But I've got Councillor Lay next, and I've got Councillor Trapp.
My question is just to follow on from the previous question. Really, we have all the information. What we really need is a spreadsheet of the whole lot relating to each of these zones, and so that we can see what's happened, what's about to happen, and what's going to happen in the future regarding funding for a particular project. As we are at the moment, and I can understand that if you've got a template that isn't quite giving us everything we want, then the answer is we need a new template, because we need to be able to look at, let's say, Ashley, see the amount that we've paid to Ashley and how much more there is to come and when it's going to come. And perhaps as well, what are we doing with the money that we're holding for the SILs in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Lay. I've got councillor Trapp next.
Just a small comment. I hope that councillor Bovingdon checked all these amounts against the other, which I did do actually. You know, it's a while away in the evening.
I think there's some valid comments there, and obviously I'm sure officers will take it away, but obviously if we're stuck with the template, because we may need to look at presenting a report that's more meaningful. I've got councillor Goldsack.
Yeah, just on that, if we're stuck with a template, I would suggest, and I'm sorry about this, Sally, I think it's you that's stuck with the template because you've obviously got to refer it to somebody else. What we're asking for is an interpretation of that template that we can understand. So sorry if that's a slightly bit more work, but I think you can sense from the conversations all across the room here that we found all the information, but it took some looking.
Councillor Whelan.
Yeah, I just want to endorse exactly that. I understand this is probably a DLUC template that they require, and I know that they just plug it into the computer and it churns out what they want at the end. But from our perspective, appreciate you've got to do this by law. Be really, really helpful to have that understanding document as well. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Whelan. I'm seeing no more hands, and this is for noting, but I mean, it's been a good debate, and I think the comments are very useful. Great, thank you. Item 10 is the Treasury Operations Mid-Year Review. And if I can hand over to Ian to introduce this, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Committee is asked to recommend to Council that the mid-year review of Treasury Management be approved. The Council has benefited during the year from higher interest rates and higher cash balances than assumed when the budget was built, and has therefore generated interest receipts well in advance of the budget. The Council remains external debt-free and will remain so for the remainder of this financial year. The economics update in this report relates to the end of September 2023, so due to the timing of this meeting may be considered a little out of date. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. We've had one question from councillor Whelan. Are you happy with the response, and do you want to follow up on that?
No, I'm quite happy with the response. I think that it sets out exactly what it was. It wasn't clear from the report exactly why interest rates rising by just over 1% would have the kind of impact that we're talking about. And it's quite clear that it's because the budget wasn't clear on a realistic amount that could be received.
Okay, thank you, councillor Whelan. Are there any other questions, members? Councillor Goldsack.
Sorry, I'm a bit of a moaning mini tonight. Just a very, very minor point, and it's not on the quality of the report. It's on the font size. This is one of the most difficult reports for non-accountant people to stick up with. And if you compare it to the font size of other reports we've seen tonight, it's smaller. And there's a guy that's suffering with his eye from an accident last year. I found that just a challenge. So if we could ask that to either be uniform or even just slightly larger font size, I think that might be very useful. So useful feedback, hopefully. Take it for what it is.
Okay, councillor. Thank you, councillor Goldsack. Any more questions? Councillor Trapp.
Sorry, Councillor Goldsack, I actually like the font size rather than the sort of children's nursery one of the service plans, which could have been condensed onto much smaller space. But I understand that actually you may have problems, and therefore I will abide by that.
Okay, we're veering into debate again now, but we have got a recommendation to recommend this to full council, and I'm happy from the chair to propose this. And do I have a second?
Happy to second, Chair.
So as I say, it's going to go to full council in February, I presume, at the next full council meeting. So, is there any members wishing to debate on this? Make any comments? Councillor Dupre.
Chair, I'm just amused that we're looking at a report that's talking about how we deal with millions of pounds of public money, and all we can talk about is the font.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's a good report, yeah. Okay, I'm seeing no dissent on that, so is everybody happy to recommend that to full council? Thank you, members. Item 11 is the finance report, and it's over to Ian again.
Thank you, Chair. Committee is asked to note the report and the overall underspend on both revenue and capital budget. Details of the budget position on individual service lines are detailed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. I've had no written questions on this, so is there any member wish to raise a question? No. So is everybody happy to note that report without debate? Councillor Holtzman, you got in just in time.
Thank you. And I mean, I know this is just a side note, but given that it seems we have a projected underspend of £900,000 this year, so overall we're doing really well on our budget. I was wondering whether as a council we could consider spending some money on buying HVO for our refuse vehicles, which is an ongoing debate on the Ops Services Committee. Because as a council, we have decided that we do want to reduce our carbon emissions, and the largest by far item on that list is the refuse vehicles. And we could essentially reduce emissions by about 80% if we did so, and the cost to the end of the year would be in the order of £35,000, which is just something I wanted to bring up for note. Thank you.
No, thank you for the comment. I'm sure Sally will take that away and speak to the relevant team. Any other comments on it? No, in which case it is for noting. So thank you. Item 12 is the assets update, and Spencer Clark has been sat over there waiting patiently. If you can introduce the report, please, Spencer. Got your mic, sorry, yeah.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Just a few notes for members for noting. I'm pleased to say that we now have our new tenant that has moved into 72-74 Market Street. The tenant is Cathedral View Childcare. I've been working quite closely with them already. They've been in just a week and they've made quite a bit of progress with preparing the building ready for their hopefully opening on January, the 3rd of January. So I've met them several times and we're working really nicely, closely together, and it seems to be a good partnership from the start. The second update I'd like to bring you is the depot project. We're now moving into the final stage of the depot project, which is really the complete refurbishment of the toilet facilities there, which is obviously much needed and be much appreciated by the staff that use it. The third point I'd just like to raise is the repairs in St Mary's car park. That's the gully repairs there. They are still ongoing, but the car park is still operational. We just section off sections at a time within the car park where the works are being carried out, and it's still on target to be completed before the really busy Christmas shopping time. So that's looking quite promising at the moment. And then finally, works to Cheveley Churchyard wall. That has actually started, but these works are very weather dependent, and we have been in contact with the church wardens, and this works will carry on for quite a while through the winter months as and when they can move forward, because they're quite specialist works that materials can only be used in certain times when the weather conditions are correct. And that concludes my update, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Spencer. We've had no written questions. Are there any questions? Councillor Lay.
Just a simple question. I've not seen a list of our assets within East Cambs. We must have a document somewhere that shows all the assets that we hold as a council. And I just wondered whether or not that could be made available for us just to have a quick look at.
We certainly have a document. It does need updating, but I can certainly look at that and try and produce something in the near future.
Just a follow-up question. When was it last updated?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, to be
that's
sure.
fine.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Thank you, Spencer, for that. Councillor Dupre.
Could I just ask, Spencer, he referred to the tenancy, of one of the buildings. Does the council have a policy on allocating car parking spaces within the council car park here for tenants of buildings which adjoin it?
We haven't actually got a policy only for staff parking at the moment at the Grange.
To follow up, if I may, I recall that we allocated a number of spaces for the combined authority when it was renting one of those premises. Was that a bespoke arrangement, or clearly it must have been a deviation from policy?
We need to, do you want to take that away and?
Yeah, I thought I'd take it away and come back with an answer. I can remember when it went out to advert, it was clearly stated there was no parking on site at the time it went out to advert for the new tenants. I can come back to you with the other answer.
Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair. We did have a fairly successful tour of the properties that East Cambs District Council own. And I must say I was a little bit, people who came enjoyed it, I think, but I was a little bit disappointed at the turnout that we had. But we intend to be doing another one. So in addition to Spencer updating the list, we'll also in the spring have another sort of tour of the properties. And if any members have got any suggestions about where they would like to go and see, if they dropped an email to Spencer, we could probably include that in the journey. I'd recommend it.
Thank you, councillor. I was going to bring you in later as the asset champion. All I say, and I think we discussed it last time, I did go on the tour and I found it very, very useful. But obviously it was during the day and lots of people are working during the day. So we need to, you know, and I'm sure there are members who work full-time who would like to have gone on it. So we need to try and come up with some other time that's acceptable. You know, that will hopefully bring in those other members who could join it. But it's certainly, if you get the chance to do it, it's certainly worthwhile. Are there any other questions? Councillor Goldsack. I was, it's just for noting, I was going to ask Councillor Hunt to, as the asset champion, if he wanted to make any comments, and I was going to open it up to any further comments.
Well, I'll make my comment if I can then.
Yes, okay.
Which was in the course of a line of duty, nothing to do with the council. I had cause to visit the depot at Littleport, delivering goods if it be known, and I have passed the feedback on to Spencer of how open-eyed and impressed I was with the whole place. And it was really interesting. And one chap came to me and he went, "Are you the chairman of the council?" I went, "Yeah." So what are you delivering trees for? So that's a different matter. But you know, the point I wanted to make was, you know, when you go to facilities like that, it was really good to feel proud about. And it was just at the time when most of the lorries were coming back in from doing the refuse collection. So it was a busy time. And I just wanted to publicly say that, Spencer, as much as I'd already told you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goldsack. So is that the question, Councillor Miller? Yeah.
Yes. I suppose I should ask you, Chair, my question really relates to agenda item 13. So this is not really the right time to raise it. But the reason I am going to raise it now is because Spencer would be the logical person to whom to address it.
Spencer will be here for item 13 as well. So, yeah. So if I move to Councillor Hunt, if he wants to, as the asset champion, if he wants to make any comments, and then I'll ask any other members if they want to make comments.
Yes, I think if there's a criticism of Spencer and myself, it's that we've been doing things which we haven't kept all members fully informed all the time. And it's true that we meet up for a day, possibly every 2 months, and we go round and we're talking about forest schools down by the river. We're talking about renting out the properties down here, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So we should get more members involved, and it's really quite fascinating all the things that the council's involved with. You know, whether it's repairing unoccupied graveyards, gates to doing lots of things, and I would certainly welcome it. The Market Street, as you know, has been empty for some time. We even get into things like the county council need to get rid of some chairs and tables, so we decide that they'll put in a bid for them. And we now own some extra tables and chairs at about 1/10 of their retail price, which are being used in the revamped depot. So there's lots of things going on all the time, and if you've got questions, either ask Spencer or myself, and I'd be delighted to fill you in.
Thank you, councillor Hunt. Are there any comments? Councillor Dupre?
Chair, I'm interested to hear what I've just heard, and I'm wondering how that fits in with the committee model of local governance. I didn't think individual councillors had individual powers to go around with officers making decisions.
They certainly don't, and I think we need to.
It was a recommendation to various things.
Chair, does that also mean that we can have tours with Spencer and go around and make our own recommendations, which are enacted without coming to this committee?
I'm sure there's nothing against the individual councillors making, speaking to Spencer and making recommendations, but obviously they should come through committee. I think we'll take that away.
So will the recommendations that councillor Hunt has been making to the officer come to this committee as well in future?
Yeah.
So that we know what they are.
Yeah, I'll take that away. Yeah, thanks.
I think I was trying to be inclusive and probably quite friendly, and it does seem a pity that if someone is candid and explains what's going on or what has gone on, that it's immediately picked on. I find it, I wanted to involve the members over there with the things that were going on in the council. And I will continue to keep trying to involve you because you are members as much as I am.
Thank you. That's very big of councillor Hunt.
Thank you, members. Any more comments on this? No, it's just for noting anyway. So thank you, Spencer, for that. And we move now on to item 13. I've got Maggie, I think, is introducing the paper.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. As outlined in my report, members are asked to consider and approve the transfer of the play area and the adjacent surface ball games area at Victoria Green, Wychford, to Wychford Parish Council on the terms set out in paragraph 4.1 of the report. Since compiling my report, I have noted that on previous transfers of play areas to parish councils, which I refer to actually in paragraph 2.1 of the ones to Little Thetford and Streatham, the district council actually included a provision that if the land ceased in the future to be a play area, that the parish council would transfer the play area and surface ball game area back to the district council for the sum of £5. I would therefore like to amend my report to include a recommendation that if the council agrees the transfer, an additional condition is added to the effect that if the land ceased to be the play area or the surface ball game area, the land would be transferred back to the district council for the sum of £5. I'm happy to take questions, Chairman.
Thank you, Maggie. So are there any questions? I've had no written questions. I've got Councillor Goldsat and Councillor Lay.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Maggie, I think this is a really good scheme. My question is, I understand there are such play areas. Sorry, let me backtrack if I can. I apologise. I wanted to understand the reason why Wychford would want it. And I could see it in the letter, but fundamentally, as I understand that parishes and town councils would like to take ownership of this because of access to third-party grants that enable them to better the facilities moreover than we're able to do. And for that, I absolutely support it. So my question really is, can we extend this and offer the same deal to any parish or town council in East Cambridgeshire that is sitting with a similar potential asset? Because I think that's a really good way of increasing revenue into parish and town council areas for recreational services. And I absolutely love the £5 buyback offer, which secures the asset forever.
Through you, Chair, I would just say that obviously we consider any application that's made to the council on its own merits. Spencer works with the parish council to actually work out what the proposal is. And then obviously if I receive a proposal directly, I would always defer to Spencer. And we take each one on its own merits. I get what you're saying, Councillor Goldsack, but we would take it on its own merits.
No, I'm asking to reverse that. I'm asking to reverse that because I think there will be parish councils out there. They're not all sitting and watching this debate tonight, unfortunately. There'll be parish councils out there that don't realise that they could benefit from this. What I'm saying as part of our public service role here to the parish and town councils, if we identified a piece of recreational area that's in there, I don't know, take somewhere like Stetchworth, I don't know, the other side of Newmarket, right? And they've got it, and let's say that's a East Cams thing that they've got 3 swings and a slide, right? Well, through grants, external grants, if they could get 5 swings, a slide and a roundabout, then the benefits are there for the people of Stetchworth. We can't do that for them, so I think this would be beneficial for us to write to them to say, we've identified this piece of land, we've done this for Little Thetford, Streatham and Whitchford. Would you like to pursue this? That then results in the request that you've got, but they might not know it's available in the first place.
Would you like us to take that away and come back to the
I think,
committee?
yes, if we can take it away, just to mention Stetchworth is owned by the parish council, but
Red herring,
I take you,
yeah.
I know, I take your point. I've got councillor Lay, then councillor Trapp, then councillor Colbert.
Thank you, Chair. My question is regarding the rest of the land, which is which encompasses this red area where there are paths all the way round. First part of the question is, who owns the rest of the land that this area sits in?
The district council.
Sorry?
The district council.
The district council owns the whole of that.
Yes.
So there is no problem with access from the pavement into this area. We no problem in granting that. And as far as our district plan is concerned, Chair, how does that area sit? Is it a green area for the life of this council? Or how is it designated?
Johnson? Well, I was actually involved with the transfer of that land to the district council in the first place. It was it's designated as public open space for that particular development, which is Victoria Green, and that was actually transferred from the developer as part of that project and under the Section 106 agreement to the district council.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Lay. I've got councillor Trapp next.
Councillor Lay has actually asked the question I was going to ask, whether there was access from the paths to the area, because it seemed that area may be wrongly mapped, doesn't actually touch the paths. But there is access, is there? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you, councillor. I've got councillor Colbert.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Goldsack makes a very interesting point. I hadn't appreciated that town councils might be able to access grants that we couldn't access. But I can appreciate that's possible. In the past, I've accessed grants from landfill sites and all sorts of odd things. The only other thing is that I think we have to be careful about the precise wording that goes with the transfer back of the land. I absolutely agree that it should be secured for leisure use ad infinitum, but I'm not sure about ball games, because mightn't a situation arise where the local parish council might, for example, want to put a skateboard park on that particular site if it's got plenty of ball game spaces elsewhere? That was the only point I wanted to make. Thank you.
That's a valid comment. Thank you, councillor Colbert. I've got councillor Hunt next.
Yes, I don't know. I assumed every member knew, but I don't think they did, that there is this quite common demand by parish councils to improve the facilities in their particular village or wherever. According to the last summary I've got, we own 26 of these places throughout the district. And there is money, and it extends slightly more because it goes into cricket fields that are on a very casual lease. And generally the major grant offerers say you've got to have at least a long lease or the freehold. Now, in some cases, we're able, as would be the case with what we're considering in a minute, or as we speak, and they would, the third party would say, there you go, look, we can give you this grant, but you know, you've got to own the freehold or a long lease. So this course of action does it. But of course, a lot of these play parks are in highly valuable locations, and in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, there could be pressure on to develop. Well, if we have the safeguard here that keeps this property in public ownership forever, I think it's the right thing to do, and in this particular case, it will encourage Whitchford Parish Council to go ahead. And I think, as my colleague has said, we could, you know, put it to the committee, and we could roll this out in a little bit more and tell the people of Village Parish Council south of Newmarket that we can't name, and tell everybody that this is a consideration we might have, and we might be able to put it through the committee and see if we can help more parishes make kids play a bit nicer.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. I've got Councillor Dupre next, then Councillor Miller, then Councillor Bovingdon. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to ask a question about accessibility, in that I'm in no way seeking to prevent this happening. I think this is a good thing, just to put this on the record. But if parish councils take over, and that's, you know, as I say, that's fine, local play areas, is there a way by which we can ensure that there is accessible play space and accessible play amenities for children with disabilities? Because there doesn't seem to be any requirement within this to do that. And I can kind of understand why one wouldn't want to hobble too much the ability of parish councils to manage what would then be the assets they're managing in the interests of their communities. But disabled children are part of our communities as well. And I wondered how we were going to seek to ensure across the piece that there were facilities for play for children with disabilities.
Thank you, Councillor Dupre. Any comments?
Spencer wants to.
Sorry?
Spencer.
Oh, Spencer wants to come in on that, yeah.
I'd just like to say really to members that it's something that's very much on my agenda to look at, and there's also two areas to look at, because there's inclusive play and then there's DDA compliant as well. So I think we need to look at that. So I've been working with actually some of the manufacturers of playgrounds and that, and they're pointing me in direction of some charities and that to talk to. So I can just assure you that I'm actually gathering lots of information at the moment, and I'm happy to come back to members at a later point and take this item a bit further. That's happy to do so.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to come,
if I could
come
just
back?
follow up on that, I think it would be really useful to know in what way a move to do these kind of transactions with parish councils will actually impact on the office's ability and our ability to oversee that agenda, and what's being put in place to ensure that we can continue to do so.
Yeah, to be fair, I was thinking of more what we actually already own, because we own the majority of the playgrounds, and sort of then hopefully we can work with parishes and planning department and things moving forward as a whole.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Miller next.
Thank you, Chair. So you'll have to forgive my earlier mistake, and you'll see why I made it in a moment. The question I had was to do with this parcel of land that's in Appendix 1. is that the level of detail that the list of assets that the council owns would go into, the value of that parcel of land as perhaps the valuation of it as it may be reflected in the area to be transferred?
I'm trying, yeah. Maggie, did you want to try and answer that?
Can I just sort of clarify you? I know you've said, is that the level of detail? Well, that's really just really showing where the play area is in relation to the open space. That the land, just to clarify, the land hasn't been valued. It's a nominal, because it's a transfer to a parish council. It's a nominal value of £5. It's like the old peppercorn rent sort of value. Does that help, or have I
No.
missed your question?
No,
Sorry.
I mean, it's a piece of land. It has value. In other circumstances, it could be sold and it could be built on, and so it has real value. It is an asset of the councils, and so my question was, the assets, the list of assets that the council owns, even if it is only estimated based on comparable land in comparable areas, is that the level of detail into which the asset register would go? And even if you remove the question from that particular example, does the asset register list individual parcels of land? Presumably that has a title, for example. Does the asset register, this is why I attempted to ask it in the previous agenda item, that title, does it have a listing, an entry somewhere in the list of assets? Is it that level of detail that it goes to, or is it only an aggregate?
Ian wants to come in and answer this.
I mean, just to come in on that, the council has recently brought a new asset register software from SIPFA, who's my accountancy body, and we're putting all our assets onto that and have been for the last sort of 12, 18 months, and that's going to be our master record for all assets across the council. In relation to the value put against assets, yeah, all the assets are listed individually, but they're valued at their current use value, which means things like open spaces will have a very minimal value. And things like our car parks, because they're free car parks, they also have a very minimal value. Although I fully recognise what you say, that if we were to sell them at some point in the future, the value would be significantly different to that. But we have to value them at current use value.
Thank you very much. That is very helpful because it explains a subtle distinction that I haven't fully appreciated. Again, put it down to my experience.
Okay, thank you, Ian. And Councillor Miller. I've got Councillor Bobbington next.
Very briefly, just regarding the security, etc. My understanding as well is that Witchford have a neighbourhood plan, and therefore there must be some protection for that public open space within their neighbourhood plan. Am I correct with that? Would anybody?
We take that away and come back to
Yeah,
you.
it's not necessarily regarding Witchford, but I'm just thinking of
Yeah.
if
I'll take it away and I'll-
place
I'll
has
think
if any place has a neighbourhood plan, it's obviously going to include its open spaces and everything in there. Therefore, is it protected under that regardless of what East Cambs have got? Thank you.
Just to come back in that, obviously the district council own it, so it will be for us to do something with it, which we're not of mind to do at all. So, but yeah, I take the point. I've got Councillor Hunt, then Councillor Holtzman.
Yeah, I'd just like to put Councillor Dupre's mind at rest. The reason typically, and this Witchford one is obviously a typical example, the parish council want to make their playgrounds bigger and better and more inclusive. And the very fact that they want to invest and get third-party funding is no doubt there will be many, not many, just many parish councillors or councils who will expand their play parks and therefore be more inclusive and make the appeal to a larger age range. And so, frankly, it is to improve the accessibility and enjoyment of the people of that village that the parish councils are doing it in the first place with more money and a third party money at that. They should be able to just give another lovely facility.
Thank you, councillor Hunt. I've got councillor Holtzman.
Just as a quick comment, Witchford Parish Council does have a current neighbourhood plan which is in force, and they have a single issue review going on at the moment.
Thank you for that information. Councillor Trapp.
Sorry, following on from councillor Hunt and the possibility of increasing the thing, is this the land that is to be transferred? Is it the existing play area, or is there, say, some bit more for augmentation of the facilities, which would have thought would be better in that it actually can increase the whatever it is, the number of swings, the number of roundabouts, the trapeze, whatever they do. I don't know what they do, but your climbing frame, whatever it is. So it might be better to transfer a slightly larger piece of land so that they can augment.
That does represent the current play area and surface ball game area, as far as I'm aware, and that's what they've asked to be transferred to them.
Thank you. I've got councillor Dupre, then councillor Lay.
Thank you, Chair. I've just checked the Witchford neighbourhood plan and it does include the whole of the area itemised outlined in red, as well as the surrounding area as local green space. And I can't wait to try the trapeze.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lay.
Yes, just I presume this will be our recommendation tonight to go to full committee.
This committee has got the authority to make this decision, so it won't go to full council. It will, if members agree this now, then this will, as the point set small 2 says, authorise the director legal and monitoring to proceed accordingly. So if we make a decision tonight that to transfer, then that's a decision. We obviously had questions. We veered totally into debate, but hopefully everybody's had their chance to speak on this and make their comments. So, you know, I'll move. Sorry. Yes, sorry. Yes.
Yes, I would like to propose that we agree the transfer of the play area and adjacent surface ball games area to Witchford Parish Council on the terms set out in paragraph 4.1 of this report, and authorise the director, legal and monitoring officer to proceed accordingly.
Okay, have you got a seconder for that?
I'll second what he said.
Yeah.
Chair, there was also an additional recommendation.
I was just about to say that. Yeah. We've obviously got the the recommendation as well to amend the £5 buyback if for any reason,
of course,
which Maggie has mentioned earlier. So that needs to be included with
the legal officer will do that, I'm sure.
Yeah. So members, are we all in favour of transferring that land? That's unanimous, I think. Thank you. And then item 14 is the forward agenda plan. Have you got any comments to make on it, Sally, or?
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to the January meeting to reflect the decisions made today under item 8, and can I just confirm that the service plan's being deferred to January as well from today?
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Goldsack.
Yeah, just a very quick one. I've quickly cast my eye down this, and my initial thought was, my goodness, there's a lot of meaty stuff on the January one. We could be here all night. Then I looked to the left and saw it was actually almost exactly the same length as tonight, and we're done at a reasonably good time. So I think it's down to the debate and down to the subject matter. But I think we are coming in. I think we need to come into the January one with eyes wide open, that there's a lot of meaty stuff to discuss on that one.
No, I'd agree. There is a lot of items on that. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you, Chair. I note that for the January meeting, the full business case for the crematorium is still down as potential. And I thought that was a definite thing that was going to be coming to the committee. Could you explain why it's still just potential?
We'll confirm that after the meeting. I think it's just been carried across the same text, but I'll confirm after the meeting.
Yes, I think it's a typo on that, so yeah. But no, as councillor Goldsack says, I'll bring councillor Lane in a minute, but there is a lot on that agenda, but hopefully we can be expedient with our debate. But councillor Lay.
Yes, I was just a little concerned that because of the environmental plan that we're going to look at again, if that's going to be looked at in any detail, it will take quite a considerable amount of time. And I wondered, Chair, whether or not that should be put as a separate agenda and handled in a different way and then brought back to this committee.
Okay, we'll certainly look at that proposal, but at the moment it's on the agenda for next time. Any other comments, councillor Dupre?
That seems to be a very reasonable comment from councillor Lay, and I was just wondering whether there might perhaps be a way within, say, a member seminar or something like that to gather thoughts, views and comments that might take some of the questions and debate away from the next meeting, so that we can come in the light of that information a bit more fully formed in our views.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got councillor Miller, then Goldsack, and then Lay.
Chair, thank you. I would like to suggest that on a matter of such import that if it were to be shunted to a member seminar or similar, then it would not be appropriate to do so unless it were properly recorded and part of the routine agenda business of council, if you see what I mean. It needs to be open to the public to scrutinise.
I wouldn't disagree with that comment. I've got councillor Goldsack.
Yeah, two comments. I think we had some excellent input from a member of the public today, which shows how broad and wide this subject matter is. I felt at the time in the debate, but quite frankly, I'd had 3 goes at the debate at the time, so I thought I'd better shut up. I am also concerned that, you know, we are less than 50% of the overall council mass here, and they've all got an opinion right to come into that. But how do they find out about that without having this as a broader subject matter? So listen, diary times between now and the 25th of January to get this to a report to the 25th of January would be a nightmare. But I think we should make best efforts to do that. And this also supports the comment I made earlier that actually what we're underpinning here is every aspect of the local plan, because the environmental aspects will impact every aspect of the local plan. So I think it's important that we get it right. I'd rather get it right a little bit after the initial time that we'd like it than rush it through, not have everybody's opinion.
Thank you, councillor Goldsack. Got councillor Lay next, and then councillor Trapp.
Yes, I'm just going to say that, is there any need for the environment chapter to be done by January the 25th? Because it seems that the Thursday 28th of March meeting is slightly has fewer larger issues there. I'm just wondering whether we're building it for the local plan, which is going to be in a few years' time, couple of years' time, whether to give it full debate might be better just to move it further down.
That was certainly one of my thoughts sat here listening to it. I think we will take it away, but obviously what we don't want, I'll bring councillor Holtzman in a minute. Sorry, I agree totally with councillor Miller that it needs to be in public. But obviously we don't want to curtail debate because it's a very important issue, and we've got other important issues on that potentially on the 25th of January. So,
but that's not to preclude having a member seminar.
No.
Leading into it.
Yes. No.
Thank you.
Yeah, councillor Holtzman.
Also, this would give the opportunity for Richard Kay to actually write a draft for, let's say, mid-January, then send it to all of the members so we can have some time to read it, think about it, give some feedback, and then maybe actually send the feedback back to him, so kind of like he can collate it. So that at the time when it comes to committee, it's already kind of like gone through one round of council feedback and then can go and be discussed in public.
That's a very valid comment. I think we'll take that away and
Sorry, I smile because I don't think we've ever had so much debate on the forward agenda. Right.
Okay, members, thank you for that. We'll certainly take that away. We next move on to the next item, which is exclusion of the press and public due to the consideration of the remaining items, likely in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that if members of the public were present during the items, there will be disclosure to them of exempt information of categories 1 and 3 of Part 1, Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Are all members happy to agree that? In which case, that closes the public part of the meeting, and I'd like to thank those members of the press and public watching online for their listening to the debate tonight, and hopefully they found it interesting. And similarly, please, for those members of the public looking, we welcome contributions to the environment chapter. If they've got, I'm sure they've got some ideas that they wish to bring to our notice. But thank you very much and have a good evening.